chewing a bone. "Mrs. Delaney?" I said louder this time. She didn't turn. The sound stopped, and she straightened, her movements slow and jerky. When she faced me, my breath caught. Her eyes were wrong, cloudy, like fogged glass. A streak of something dark ran down her chin, glistening in the fading light that I stumbled back, the knife slipping from my hand. Mrs. Delaney's mouth opened, and she let out a sound that wasn't human, a rasping snarl. She shuffled toward the fence, her hands clawing at the air. I turned and ran back to the house, slamming the door behind me and locking it. My heart pounded as I leaned against the counter, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. Mrs. Delaney was old, sure, but she wasn't that old. Maybe she was sick. Maybe I was losing it. Chapter 3. The news. I grabbed my phone and checked the news again. The Omaha story had updated. Chemical spill prompts evacuation warnings. The article was vague, mentioning health concerns and temporary shelter protocols, but nothing about people acting like whatever Mrs. Delaney was doing. I scrolled through social media, but the local Haven Ridge group was quiet, just posts about the high school football game and a lost dog. The blinds rattled as something brushed against the back door. I froze, my phone slipping to the floor. The sound came again, a slow scrape, like someone dragging their nails across the wood. I crept to the door and peeked through the blinds. Mrs. Delaney was there, her face pressed against the glass, her cloudy eyes staring blankly. Her mouth opened, and a bubble of spit popped at the corner of her lips. I backed away, my hands shaking. The TV was still on, and I turned up the volume to drown out the scraping. A news anchor was talking, her voice calm but strained. Authorities are urging residents of Haven Ridge and surrounding areas to stay indoors due to a reported chemical incident. Emergency services are responding. Please remain calm and await further instructions. The ticker at the bottom of the screen repeated the message, but there was something off about the anchor. Her eyes were glassy, and her words slurred slightly, like she was drunk. That I turned off the TV and sat on the couch, clutching the knife again. My mom's car pulled into the driveway. Relief flooded me, but it didn't last. She didn't get out of the car right away, which wasn't like her. Mom was always in a rush, always moving. I went to the front window and looked out. Her car was parked crooked, one wheel on the grass. She was still in the driver's seat, her head tilted forward, unmoving. Chapter 4. The changed. I opened the front door and called out, "Mom?" No response. I stepped onto the porch, the knife still in my hand. The street was quiet, too quiet for a Thursday afternoon. No kids on bikes, no neighbors mowing lawns. Just Mom's car, sitting at that wrong angle. I walked toward it, my sneakers crunching on the gravel. As I got closer, I saw her hand still on the steering wheel, gripping it tightly. Her head was down, her blonde hair falling over her face. "Mom, you okay?" I said, my voice shaking. She didn't move. I reached for the door handle, but something stopped me, a low, wet sound, like someone gargling. Her head jerked up, and I stumbled back. Her eyes were like Mrs. Delaney's, cloudy and empty. Her mouth was smeared with something dark, and her teeth were stained, jagged, like they'd been filed down. She snarled, a sound that made my skin crawl, and lunged against the window. The glass shook but held. I backed away, tripping over the curb and landing hard on the grass. Mom clawed at the window, her nails leaving streaks in the grime. I scrambled to my feet and ran back to the house, locking the door behind me. My chest was tight, my breath coming in short gasps. I grabbed my phone and dialed Ray. It went straight to voicemail. I tried Mom's number, then 911. Nothing. The lines were dead, or maybe the network was down. I checked the news again, but the app wouldn't load. The TV was static now, no signal. I sat on the couch, the knife across my lap, and listened to the faint scratching from the back door. Mrs. Delaney was still there, and Mom was out front, trapped in her car, but not for long. Chapter 5. The escape. The scratching at the back door stopped, replaced by a new sound, a low, rhythmic thumping, like someone banging their head against the wood. I couldn't stay here. Mom wasn't Mom anymore, and Mrs. Delaney wasn't Mrs. Delaney. Whatever was happening, it wasn't just a chemical spill. I grabbed my backpack, stuffed in a water bottle, a flashlight, and the bag of tortilla chips, and headed for the garage. Ray's old pickup was there, the keys hanging on a hook by the door. I hadn't driven it in months, but it was my only shot. I climbed in, started the engine, and pulled out onto the street, trying not to look at Mom's car. She was still there, slamming her head against the window now, blood smearing the glass. I floored the gas and sped toward downtown Haven Ridge, hoping to find someone, anyone, who wasn't changed. The streets were empty, but not lifeless. Shadows moved in the windows of houses, and I caught glimpses of figures shuffling in yards. Their movements were wrong, jerky, like puppets with broken strings. I turned onto Main Street, where the gas station, a diner, and a small grocery store lined the road. The diner's neon sign was flickering, and the grocery store's windows were smashed. A figure stood in the doorway of the diner, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. I kept driving. I pulled into the parking lot of Haven Ridge High, the only place I could think of that might have people. The football field was empty, but the gym doors were open. I grabbed the knife and flashlight and headed inside, my footsteps echoing in the silent halls. The air smelled of sweat and bleach, but there was something else, something sour and metallic. I rounded a corner and froze. A janitor, Mr. Perez, was slumped against a locker, his face torn open, blood pooling around him. Another figure crouched over him, tearing at his arm with its teeth. Chapter 6. The survivors, it backed away, He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was hoarse. "I'm fine, kid. Just old." But he wasn't fine. An hour later, he started coughing, a wet, hacking sound. Claire shone her flashlight on him, and we saw it. His eyes were clouding over, his skin taking on a grayish hue. "No," Claire whispered. "Not you too." Mr. Grayson tried to speak, but his words came out garbled. He lurched to his feet, his movements jerky. Tyler screamed, and I grabbed a broken chair leg, holding it like a club. "Stay back," I shouted, but Mr. Grayson didn't listen. He lunged at Claire, his teeth snapping. I swung the chair leg, hitting him in the shoulder. He stumbled but didn't stop. Claire grabbed Tyler and pulled him toward the stairs. "We have to go," she yelled. I hit Mr. Grayson again, this time in the head. He collapsed, his body twitching. I didn't wait to see if he'd get up. We ran up the stairs, the snarls of the Changed echoing behind us. The library was crawling with them now, their shadows moving in the dim light. We slipped out the side entrance and ran into the night. Chapter 9. The streets Haven Ridge was a ghost town. Cars were abandoned, some with doors open, others smashed. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and decay. We stuck to alleys, avoiding the main roads where the Changed roamed. Claire led us toward her apartment, a few blocks away. "It's on the second floor," she said. "We can barricade the stairs." We moved quietly, but the Changed were everywhere. Their snarls filled the air, and their footsteps echoed in the dark. We hid behind a dumpster as a group of them shuffled past, their eyes glinting in the moonlight. One of them stopped, sniffing the air. My heart stopped. It turned toward us, its head tilting. Claire gripped my arm, her nails digging into my skin. The Changed moved on, and we kept going. Claire's apartment was in a small building with a fire escape. We climbed it, the metal creaking under our weight. Inside, we pushed a couch against the door and collapsed on the floor. Tyler was crying, his face buried in his hands. Claire hugged him, whispering that it would be okay, but her voice shook. I checked the windows. The street below was alive with movement, dozens of the Changed, shuffling aimlessly. A helicopter roared overhead, its searchlight cutting through the dark. I waved, hoping they'd see us, but the light moved on. Gunfire erupted a few blocks away, followed by screams. The military was here, but they weren't saving anyone. They were mowing down anything that moved. Chapter 10. The end. We stayed in Claire's apartment for 2 days, living off canned soup and crackers. The power was out, and the water was starting to taste metallic. Tyler barely spoke, and Claire was fraying at the edges, jumping at every sound. I kept watch at the window, but the Changed never stopped coming. They filled the streets, their numbers growing. On the third day, we heard a broadcast on Claire's battery-powered radio. A distorted voice announced that Haven Ridge was under quarantine, that survivors should stay indoors. "Help is coming," the voice said, but it didn't sound convincing. Claire turned off the radio and looked at me. "We can't stay here forever." She was right. The food was running low, and the Changed were getting bolder, banging on the doors below. We decided to make a run for the edge of town, where there was a National Guard checkpoint. It was a long shot, but it was better than waiting to die. We packed what we could and climbed down the fire escape at dawn. The streets were quieter now, but the Changed were still there, lurking in doorways and alleys. We moved fast, sticking to backyards and side streets. At one point, we passed a house with its front door open. Inside, a figure stood in the shadows, its head tilted. It was Mom. I froze, my chest tightening. She didn't move, just stared with those empty eyes. Claire pulled me away, and we kept going. We reached the edge of town by noon. The checkpoint was there, but it was abandoned, the tents torn and the ground littered with shell casings. A few bodies lay scattered, some Changed, some not. Claire's face fell. "They're gone," she whispered before I could answer. A snarl came from behind us. A group of Changed was closing in, their movements faster now, hungrier. We ran, but there was nowhere to go. The road stretched out, empty and endless. I looked at Claire and Tyler, their faces pale and determined. We weren't heroes. We were just people trying to survive. As the Changed closed in, I heard the roar of a helicopter. I looked up, waving frantically. "Here," I shouted. The searchlight found us, and for a moment, I thought we were saved. Then the gunfire started, tearing through the Changed and us. I felt a sharp pain in my side and fell, the world spinning. Claire's scream was the last thing I heard before everything went black. Our story is over. Now let's continue the summary part of our story. Chapter 11. The aftermath. The world was quiet when I opened my eyes, or maybe it was just my head playing tricks. The pain in my side was a dull throb now, not the sharp, searing stab I'd felt when the bullets tore through the air. I was lying on my back, the ground cold and wet beneath me. The sky above was gray, heavy with clouds that looked ready to choke the last bit of light out of Haven Ridge. My breath came in shallow gasps, each one tasting of dust and something metallic, like blood or rust. I wasn't sure if I was alive or if this was some kind of in-between, a limbo where the dead lingered before they realized they were gone. I tried to sit up, but my body didn't want to listen. My arms shook and my vision swam, the edges blurring like a bad TV signal. I touched my side, expecting to feel a hole, but my fingers found only torn fabric and a sticky warmth. The bullet had grazed me, not buried itself in my gut. I wasn't dead, not yet, but I wasn't sure that was a good thing. The checkpoint was a mess around me. The tents were shredded, flapping in the wind like ghosts of the National Guard who'd been here hours ago. Maybe days. Time was slippery now, like trying to hold water in your hands. Shell casings glinted on the ground, mixed with clumps of dirt and darker stains I didn't want to think about. I couldn't see Claire or Tyler. I couldn't see the changed, either, but their snarls still echoed in my head, a soundtrack I couldn't turn off that I rolled onto my side, groaning, and pushed myself to my knees. My backpack was gone, probably lost when I'd hit the ground. The knife was gone too. All I had was the flashlight, still clipped to my belt, its plastic cracked but intact. I flicked it on, the beam weak and flickering, and swept it across the checkpoint. Bodies were scattered everywhere. Some changed, their heads split open or limbs torn apart. Others human, their uniforms soaked in blood. The helicopter was gone, but the air still smelled of cordite and smoke, like the ghost of the gunfire hadn't quite left. Claire? I croaked, my voice barely audible. Tyler? No answer, just the wind, whistling through the broken tents. I staggered to my feet, leaning against a rusted barricade for support. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else, wobbly and weak, but I forced them to move. I had to find them. I had to know if they'd made it, or if they were like Mom now, shuffling through the streets with empty eyes and rotting teeth. The road stretched out ahead, leading back into Haven Ridge. I didn't want to go back there, didn't want to see the houses with their smashed windows or the bodies lying in the grass. But I didn't have anywhere else to go. The checkpoint was a dead end, and the fields around it were too open, too exposed. If the changed were still out there, or worse, if the military was still sweeping through, shooting anything that moved, I'd be better off in town, where I could hide. I started walking, my sneakers crunching on gravel. The pain in my side flared with every step, but I ignored it. I'd felt worse, like the time I'd fallen off my bike as a kid and broken my arm, or the time Ray had caught me sneaking his beer and given me a black eye. Those hurts had faded, and this one would too. Or maybe it wouldn't. Maybe I was bleeding out, and my brain was too stubborn to admit it. Haven Ridge looked different in the gray light, like someone had drained the color from it. The streets were empty, but not the kind of empty you got on a Sunday morning when everyone was at church. This was a dead empty, the kind that made your skin crawl. I passed the diner again, its neon sign dark now, the windows shattered. Something moved inside, a shadow that jerked and swayed. I didn't stop to look. I kept my eyes on the road, one foot in front of the other, until I reached the edge of downtown. The library was still standing, its brick walls solid despite the cracked windows. I don't know why I went there. Maybe because it was the last place we'd felt safe before Mr. Grayson turned and the changed broke in. Maybe because I hoped Claire and Tyler had gone back, looking for me. I pushed open the side door, the hinges creaking, and stepped inside. The air was thick with dust and the sour smell of decay. Books were scattered on the floor, pages torn and smeared with blood. I shone my flashlight around, half expecting to see Mr. Grayson's body, but it was gone, dragged away by the changed, maybe, or taken by the military. Claire? I called again, softer this time. My voice echoed in the empty reading room. I moved toward the basement stairs, my heart pounding. The filing cabinet we'd used as a barricade was still there, but it was pushed aside, the door hanging open. I stepped down, the flashlight beam shaking in my hand. The basement was colder than I remembered, the air heavy with dampness. Boxes were overturned, their contents spilled across the floor. I saw a shoe, one of Tyler's sneakers, the laces frayed. My stomach twisted that I called their names again, but the only sound was my own breathing, ragged and loud. I was about to turn back when I heard it, a low, wet gurgle, like someone trying to speak through a mouthful of water. I swung the flashlight around and froze. Claire was slumped against a wall, her head down, her hair matted with blood. Tyler was next to her, his face buried in her shoulder. For a moment, I thought they were dead. Then Claire's head jerked up and her eyes met mine. They were cloudy, like fogged windows, and her mouth opened, revealing teeth that were dark and cracked. "No," I whispered, backing away. Tyler's head lifted too, his face smeared with blood. He snarled, a sound that made my knees buckle. They weren't Claire and Tyler anymore. They were changed, just like Mom, just like Mr. Grayson. I turned and ran, tripping over a box and slamming into the stairs. Pain shot through my side, but I kept going, scrambling up to the main floor. The library was alive with movement now, shadows shifting in the corners, snarls echoing from the shelves that I burst out the side door and into the street, my chest heaving. The town was waking up, or whatever passed for waking up in a place like this. The changed were everywhere, shuffling out of alleys and doorways, their eyes glinting in the dim light. I ran, not caring where I was going, just needing to move. My side burned, and my vision was starting to blur again, but I didn't stop. I couldn't that I ended up at the old grain elevator on the edge of town, a rusted relic from Haven Ridge's better days. The doors were chained shut, but there was a broken window I could climb through. Inside, it smelled of mold and old wheat, the air thick with dust. I collapsed against a wall, my breath coming in gasps. The flashlight was almost dead now, its beam barely cutting through the gloom. I didn't care. I just needed a moment to think, to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. The truth was, I didn't have a next. Haven Ridge was gone, swallowed by whatever this was. Chemical spill, bioweapon, curse, I didn't know. Claire and Tyler were gone. Mom was gone. Ray was probably gone too, though I hadn't seen him since this started. I was alone, and the only thing keeping me going was the stubborn part of me that didn't want to die. Not yet. I don't know how long I sat there, listening to the wind rattle the elevator's metal walls. Maybe an hour, maybe longer. The pain in my side was fading, replaced by a strange numbness that spread through my chest. I touched my wound again, and my fingers came away dry. No blood. That should have been a relief, but it wasn't. Something felt wrong, like my body wasn't mine anymore. A noise outside snapped me out of it. A low, guttural snarl, followed by the shuffle of feet. I flicked off the flashlight and held my breath. The changed were close, their shadows moving past the broken window. I pressed myself against the wall, willing my heart to stop pounding so loud. They didn't come inside, but they didn't leave either. I could hear them circling, their snarls growing louder, hungrier that I needed to move. But where? The military was out there, shooting anything that moved. The changed were everywhere, and I was running out of places to hide. I thought about Mom, about the way she'd looked at me from the car, her eyes empty, but still hers, somehow. I thought about Claire and Tyler, about the library, about Mr. Grayson's stories of secret experiments. Maybe he was right. Maybe this wasn't an accident. Maybe someone had done this to us, to Haven Ridge, to me. I crawled to the window and peeked out. The changed were still there, a dozen of them, maybe more. Their movements were jerky, but purposeful, like they were hunting. I saw Mom among them, her blonde hair catching the faint light. My chest tightened, and I had to look away. I couldn't save her. I couldn't save anyone, but I could survive. That's what I told myself, anyway. I found a rusty ladder in the corner of the elevator, leading up to a maintenance hatch. I climbed, my arms shaking, and pushed the hatch open. The roof was flat, covered in gravel and bird droppings. From up here, I could see Haven Ridge spread out below me, a maze of empty streets and broken buildings. Smoke rose in the distance, and I heard the faint thump of helicopter blades. The military hadn't left. They were still out there, cleaning up. I sat on the edge of the roof, my legs dangling. The air was cold, and my breath fogged in front of me. I didn't know how long I could keep this up, running, hiding, scraping by. The numbness in my chest was spreading, and my hands felt heavy, like they were made of lead. I looked down at them, and in the dim light, my skin looked wrong, grayish, like Mr. Grayson's had been before he turned no. I shook my head, trying to push the thought away. I wasn't one of them. I couldn't be. I was still me, still Ethan, still the kid who'd spent his life slacking off and dreaming of something better. But the doubt was there, gnawing at me like a rat. I remembered the taste of the tortilla chips, the way they'd crunched in my mouth, and suddenly I was hungry, hungrier than I'd ever been. Not for chips, though. For something else, something warm and wet. I stood up, my legs unsteady. The snarls below were louder now, and I could see the change gathering at the base of the elevator, clawing at the walls. They knew I was here. Maybe they could smell me, the way I could smell them. A sour, rotting stench that made my mouth water. I gagged, horrified at myself, and stumbled back from the edge. The helicopter was closer now, its searchlight cutting through the sky. I ducked, not wanting to be seen. If the military thought I was one of the changed, they'd shoot me without a second thought. But what if they were right? What if I was turning, slowly, like Mr. Grayson, like Claire, like Tyler? I didn't have time to think about it. The hatch rattled, and a hand broke through, its nails black and cracked. I grabbed a piece of rebar from the roof and swung it, smashing the hand back. The changed snarled, but more were coming, their bodies piling against the hatch. I ran to the other side of the roof, looking for another way down. There was a fire escape, rusted and shaky, but it was my only shot. I climbed down, the metal groaning under my weight. The changed were inside the elevator now, their snarls echoing through the walls. I hit the ground and ran, my side aching, my vision blurring. The streets blurred too, the houses and shops blending into a gray haze. I didn't know where I was going, just that I had to keep moving. I ended up in a residential neighborhood, not far from my house. The streets were familiar, but they felt alien now, like I was walking through a memory gone wrong. I passed Mrs. Delaney's house, her back door still open, the yard empty. I kept going, my breath ragged, until I reached my own street. My house was there, the front door hanging open, the windows dark. I didn't want to go inside, but my legs carried me forward, like they had a mind of their own. The living room was just as I'd left it, the couch covered in crumbs, the TV dark. I stood there, listening to the silence. Then I heard it, a shuffle from the kitchen. I gripped the rebar, my heart pounding, and crept toward the sound. It was Mom, standing by the fridge, her back to me. She was eating something, tearing at it with her hands, the sound wet and sickening. "Mom?" I whispered, even though I knew it was pointless. She turned, her face smeared with blood, her eyes empty. She snarled, but it wasn't angry. It was almost pleading, like she was hungry, and I was the only thing left. I raised the rebar, my hands shaking. I couldn't do it. I couldn't hurt her. Even now, I dropped the rebar and backed away. She didn't follow, just stood there, her head tilted, her mouth working like she was trying to speak. I turned and ran, out the front door and into the street. The helicopter was overhead now, its lights sweeping the neighborhood. I hid behind a car, my chest heaving. The hunger was worse now, a gnawing ache that made my head spin. I pressed my hands to my face, and they felt cold, too cold. I don't know how long I stayed there, crouched in the dark. The helicopter moved on, and the streets grew quiet again. I stood, my legs shaky, and started walking. I didn't have a plan, didn't have a destination. I just kept going, one foot in front of the other, through the ruins of Haven Ridge. Days passed, maybe weeks. I lost track. I moved from house to house, scavenging what I could, canned food, bottled water, anything that wasn't spoiled. The changed were still out there, but they didn't seem to notice me as much anymore. Maybe because I was starting to smell like them, starting to move like them. My skin was gray now, my nails dark and brittle. I didn't look in mirrors anymore. I didn't want to see what I was becoming. I found a radio in one of the houses, a battery-powered one that still worked. The broadcasts were sporadic, but they told a story. The military had cordoned off Haven Ridge, calling it a quarantine zone. The chemical spill story was still the official line, but there were whispers on pirate stations, people talking about experiments, about a virus that didn't just kill, but changed. I listened, but I didn't care much. It didn't change what was happening to me. One night, I found myself back at the grain elevator. The changed were gone, their bodies cleared away, probably by the military. I climbed to the roof again, the rebar still in my hand. The sky was clear for once, stars visible through the haze. I sat there, looking out over Haven Ridge, and thought about Claire, about Tyler, about Mom. I thought about the kid I'd been, the one who'd wasted his days on the couch, dreaming of nothing. I felt the hunger again, stronger now, a fire in my gut. I knew what it wanted, what I wanted. I tried to push it down, to hold on to the part of me that was still Ethan, but it was slipping like sand through my fingers. I looked at my hands, at the cracked nails and gray skin, and I knew. I was one of them now, or close to it. I stood, the rebar clattering to the roof. I didn't need it anymore. I climbed down the fire escape and started walking, not toward the town but away from it, into the fields. The military was still out there, their helicopters circling, their guns ready. But I wasn't afraid of them anymore. I wasn't afraid of anything. The fields stretched out, endless and empty. I walked until the town was a speck behind me, until the only sound was my own footsteps, slow and shuffling. I didn't know where I was going, didn't know if there was anywhere left to go, but I kept moving, driven by something I couldn't name. Hunger, maybe, or something deeper, something that had always been there. Even before the change. I stopped at the edge of a cornfield, the stalks dry and brittle under the moonlight. I could hear them now, the changed, their snarls carrying on the wind. They were out there, in the dark, waiting. I opened my mouth, and a sound came out, a low, guttural snarl that wasn't mine but was. I stepped into the corn, the stalks closing around me, and I let go.